this idea that a great startup has two things at the same time. It's got a massive, massive vision up there in the top right. This is its North Star, the thing that drags it through, the thing which we get out of bed every morning and we think about saying, are we stepping closer to this big vision? And I challenge you, when you come back to your massive, even some of these amazing ideas that you've come up with, how can you make them bigger? I mean, what if everyone in the world was using it? What if it wasn't just, Fonterra consumers today? It's like more consumers. It's more people doing more things. What if it changes the world sort of massively? Just let your mind go bigger, right? So what is the massive? What's the North Star? But at the same time, what we have to have is a small, testable version of that value proposition that we can put in front of customers. And then we move that process up through towards that North Star, towards that massive as we go. So in startups, we call this early version of the product a minimum viable product. And our job is to get that out in front of customers as soon as we can. And we want to try and understand what that minimum viable product is. So for example, with the sort of food photography, taking a picture of food and knowing exactly what's inside it. Can we have 10 customers and can we have them just sending a picture to an email address and we just manually try and figure out what's in the food and send it back and give them some insights about what to do next? Is that the smallest version of that product that we can get in front of them? So we're trying to figure out some of the things before we're trying to write all the algorithms and all the fancy automation pieces of it. What's the smallest version of it? Peter Thiel, a US-based VC, talks about this minimum viable product in a great way that I like a lot, and he talks about it being a small monopoly, right? So he says startups should always have a monopoly on their market. It might be, though, that on the first day, your monopoly is a segment of 10 customers, right? And then when you've absolutely nailed it for those 10, you increase the size of your segment and monopolize the bigger segment. And when you've nailed it with those guys, you increase your segment and you nail it with those guys. So what you'll find is, and especially in the section that Dan will be doing with you later on, he's going to be getting you to think specifically about this small segment that you can monopolize. And this is at the beginning of the journey, as you can see on the slide here. So we have a massive, look at Facebook, look at what it's become. It's massive. Everybody connects to it. It's how we all connect to each other. Literally everyone in the world that's connected uses Facebook. They have a massive vision. What if everyone was connected socially via the web? But there's a small version of Facebook as well. And if we look at it through some of the stacks that we'll be working with on our canvas later on today, you can see this is the first version of Facebook was not massive, but it was testable, and it had the whole unique value proposition of connecting people socially, working in the context of customer-only being university students, even at Harvard at the beginning. The problem being that I don't know the name of this other person in my class, and the solution, we're going to put photo and information of each person in my university. So it's a simple, not massive idea, but it can immediately start testing what happens when we start socially connecting people more fluidly. So the unique value proposition of the business starts to come alive and we start learning from our customers. So that modality that we're looking for in you guys as founders is always a big vision. We're always going to be asking you, what's your massive vision? And we're also always going to be asking you, so what are you doing today? Where are you getting your evidence? What are you putting in front of customers? So here's an extreme way of looking at this sort of path to massive, from small to large, from testable to impossible dream, is the SpaceX business plan. So you probably all know this organization, which is a commercial organization to get people into space, but ultimately their goal is to get 1 million people colonizing Mars. Well, that's a hard start. That's a massive, right? That's hard, and there's a lot to be done to get us to that point. But what are the steps? The beginning is trial and error phase, where our job is to get anything into space and to stay there. And then we've got to get anything into space and we're going to get it to come down again. And then we've got to reduce the costs, right? And then you can see this whole process as we go through. So that's an extreme example, but let's look at some brands that you may know and understand. So here's Tesla. Does anyone here have a Tesla? Did someone put that? Did someone say yes? Was it? Oh, I was going to be jealous. Right, so, so here's Tesla's path to massive that I'm going to ask you guys to go on in a minute. So at the beginning, they didn't try to solve their end game massive goal, which is what if the entire planet was solar powered? Right, they're starting off with this simpler goal, which is what if we could make a Lotus battery powered? So we just take an existing car, take out the gas combustion engine, and we put in electricity-powered engine, and just prove that we can do that first, make a car that's great, battery-powered. Having nailed that, let's actually try and make the rest of the car around it. It's probably going to have to be an expensive car because the batteries are going to be the most expensive bit, so it's got to be a supercar. There's no point in making, you know, a tiny go-to-the-shops car because it's not going to match the market. So let's make a fancy supercar, battery-powered. If we nail that, let's make a big factory that brings down the cost of those batteries, because then we can start making consumer-grade cars for people. And then what if we could use those same batteries in people's homes, right? So the whole thing, we just step up. We don't try and nail the whole business model in one go. We step from a fairly small starting point to a larger one. Here's Uber. What if we could exploit unused limo capacity in San Francisco? So if you guys were investors and I asked you to invest in my company that exploits unused limo capacity in San Francisco, put your hand up if you would give me money? Right? Maybe some, but it doesn't sound sexy, right? It sort of sounds like a small business. It doesn't sound massive, but it's testable, right? We can say, you know, with the hypothesis at the beginning that there's all this capacity which we could be using and we could be making some money from that. You know, we can already see if we can get that capacity being used. And it's in a tight area, so we can get that monopoly just of the limo drivers in San Francisco, right? If we nail that, let's go bigger, and let's try and exploit limo capacity globally. If we nail that, let's go to taxis and other vehicles. And if we nail that, let's start moving other things around like doctors and ice creams and groceries and so on, right? So they're leading to the massive, which is what if we could move anything anywhere in the world with one button, right? So and they probably had something like that massive on the first day. They didn't set out to exploit unused limo capacity in San Francisco, but they knew that's how they could start proving out the business model. So we need you guys to sort of try and have both of these things in your mind as you go. Here's another one. This is one of our actual companies, LawPath. And the goal of LawPath is to automate 50% of the world's legal services. And that's a big goal, right? To actually literally we want to take 50% of the work that goes to law firms and make a machine deliver it. And the journey that we want to go through is, first of all, what if it's easy to customize legal documents and store them in the cloud? Simple. What if we could connect with other cloud services and auto-complete those documents? So what if you could connect to Xero and just suddenly all your employees got all their documents sorted out? Then what if we could profile customers and then start to auto-manage their risk and their protection? So that we're starting to make decisions for them to make sure they're protected. And then finally, we get up to the what if we could automate 50% of the world's legal services. So what we're trying to explore here is big idea, something that's immediately testable, something that we call an MVP. Pardon me, my computer's shifted. It's locked. Ah, there we go. All right, we're back. So this isn't a minimum viable product or an MVP, right? Because the customer gets no value until right at the very end. So one of the big misunderstandings about what startups do is you make something a bit crap at the beginning, and then eventually it'll be good. We always want to deliver something good that delivers the full value, but it just might be a smaller surface area of value. So we're not building one wheel, then two wheels, then the rest of the car, and eventually we've got a car. But if our unique value proposition for our company is that we want to get people from one place to another more quickly using less effort, right? Perhaps the first version of that's something that looks like a skateboard, then it's a scooter, then it's a bike, then it's a motorbike, then it's a car. So it's an extremely simplistic way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is this. We're not trying to deliver just a thin slice of the functionality and then making it reliable and usable and emotionally engaging in the future of the company. We want to do the slice that way. So we've just got a thin layer of it's always functional, reliable, usable, and delightful, right? But we just might be doing a lot. So the example of the minimum viable product I gave of sending an email with a photo, it still should just be amazing. You should really feel like there's someone that's looking after you on the other side and they're giving you the insight that you need from those photos that you're sending in. So we're already testing the value proposition. So, enough talking, let's get back to action. So now we're on Path to Massive V1 in your workbook. When you're working now, can you start working, if you're not already, in pairs? So you're still going to work on your own idea, but have somebody that's your collaborator, somebody that you throw your ideas up against, and also challenge that other person with some of their thinking. I want you to challenge each other with making sure, first of all, what you write at the far right-hand side is the biggest massive you can think of. I want it to sound amazing, extraordinary, unreasonable, just audacious, arrogant, right? That you're going to write something in here and you actually think you can pull it off, right? So challenge each other, and the coaches will challenge you to make that as big as you can. Then think about, and you can do this in any order you like, but basically we want to know what the minimum viable product is. So what's the simplest, scrappiest version of this massive that you can deliver? Might be to a small number of customers. Does that make sense? So Path to Massive, you've got about 20 minutes.